You have a job. You have colleagues you talk to every day, a packed calendar, and a phone that rarely stops buzzing. By every visible measure, your life is full of people. But if something actually went wrong tonight, a real crisis, and you had to pick up the phone at 11 p.m., there's a very high probability you cannot think of a single person to call. There is a vast distance between the companions successful men appear to have and the true friends they actually need. It is a quiet deficit known as the brotherhood gap. The isolation has become so pervasive that in 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a formal advisory on the loneliness epidemic. Chronic isolation is now classified as a public health crisis, carrying a mortality risk comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. This isolation in your 40s is a predictable, structural outcome of professional ascent, a quiet crisis masking itself as a highly productive life. To understand why men end up isolated, we have to look at how they build bonds in the first place. Research consistently finds that men typically socialize shoulder to shoulder. They connect through shared physical activity, playing a sport, building a project, or working side by side, rather than through direct face-to-face emotional disclosure. This bonding requires heavy scaffolding. School and early jobs force young men into the same spaces, generating repeated contact. A teammate becomes a friend through hundreds of stacked interactions. Trust builds gradually, without requiring vulnerability first. The environment does the heavy lifting. The crucial detail here is that emotional depth is a byproduct of this structural repetition. It is the result of accumulated contact, never the starting point. Looking back, those early friendships felt effortless, but they were effortless because the required structure was already built into your daily schedule. Then, somewhere between 30 and 50, the automatic scaffolding is dismantled. Career demands escalate, marriage and children consume remaining discretionary time. Geographic mobility scatters the people you used to see every week. Researchers call this a contact collapse. It does not happen overnight. It is death by 1,000 reasonable, responsible choices that slowly erase every hour of unstructured free time from your calendar. This bar chart compares the sheer volume of social hours you accumulate in your 20s versus your 40s. Sociological studies estimate that moving from an acquaintance to a close friend requires actively manufacturing upwards of 50 hours of shared time. In adulthood, finding those 50 hours competes directly against sleep, your job, and your family. Most men reasonably lose that competition. Every other obligation in an adult life has a more immediate, visible cost if it gets neglected. As a result, old connections fade. The friendship was genuine, but it was never engineered to survive without its original structural scaffolding. Even when men experience this isolation directly, they rarely name it. Society strictly equates admitting a need for emotional connection with a failure of male self-sufficiency. Instead of fixing the structural deficit, a man enters a reframing loop. He tells himself, "I'm just busy," or "I don't really need that kind of thing." He relabels his isolation as a normal phase of adulthood, but the human need for connection does not disappear just because it gets ignored. This leads to a sociological phenomenon known as man-keeping. Lacking male friends, a man leans entirely on his female partner to act as his sole confidant and the manager of his social calendar. This places an exhausting toll on women. They often spend significant time deciphering a partner's moods or checking in on his stress levels while he lacks the relational tools to return the favor. This creates a one-sided environment where the emotional labor is heavy, exhausting, and rarely reciprocated. Denying the structural problem doesn't erase the loneliness, it simply outsources the work to a partner. Eventually, this fractures the very family life a man is working so hard to protect. The standard cultural advice given to isolated men is to just reach out or be more vulnerable. For high-performing men, this advice scales completely. A single, deep conversation with an old friend you haven't seen in 3 years is a high-effort event. It attempts to jump straight to emotional intimacy while completely skipping the foundational layer of repeated contact. You cannot fix a structural deficit with a one-off emotional execution. Without a system to keep you in regular contact, even the best conversation inevitably fades right back to zero. Re-engineering a male social circle requires a shift in strategy. You have to treat friendship entirely as an infrastructure project. First, prioritize consistency over intensity. A standing monthly phone call is far more effective than trying to plan a massive annual trip. Second, drastically lower the threshold for outreach. Do not wait for a major life event to send a text. A simple, low-effort message keeps the structure alive. Third, you must schedule and protect this recurring point of contact fiercely. Give a weekly run or a regular coffee the exact same immovable priority on your calendar as a quarterly board meeting. If you don't, it will lose to other obligations. Finally, start shoulder to shoulder. Use shared low-stakes activities as your entry point. Take the men's sheds movement, where older men gather to work on physical building projects. They don't meet to talk face-to-face. They meet to build. By forcing the mechanical repetition of showing up to the same place, they recreate the scaffolding. The emotional vulnerability arrives on its own schedule. Successful adulthood systematically removes the free time required for male connection. This isolation is simply the predictable result of that process. You do not need to build a massive, complex social network. You only need to pick one person and protect one recurring, low-stakes point of contact. Rebuilding the repetitive structure of contact is the exact mechanism that makes real friendship possible. Put the scaffolding back in place, and the rest follows.